Greetings from Las Vegas. This is Andy Iskoe with the weekly Against the Spread Mark Lawrence podcast contest review, a review of several of the major handicapping contests here in Las Vegas that have been going on in many cases for decades, in other cases for several years. We talk about the 5 contests, one of which is sponsored by the Golden Nugget, which combines NFL and college football handicapping, 2 contests sponsored by the Westgate Superbook, and the 2 more recent contests that are sponsored by the Circa Race and Sportsbook. We start each week with a quick review of the standings in the Golden Nugget contest. This is a contest in which contestants make 7 selections a week, and they do make their selections from the entire board of games that are listed at the time that the contest lines come out on Wednesday afternoons. We normally do a consensus for the other contests, but we don't do it for the Golden Nugget because there are basically 60 to 65 games a week, and with 153 contestants, there's not going to be a large number on any specific games that a consensus of popular plays would be all that meaningful. So I normally just give you a recap of where the leader stands. Now, through the first 9 weeks of the contest, they've made a total of 63 selections. There's one leader who has an against the point spread record in the contest of 41-22 with 0 pushes. That works out to a total of 41 out of a possible 63 points, getting 1 point for a correct point spread win and getting half a point for a point spread push and no points for a point spread loss. That 41 out of 63 works out to a 65.1% winning percentage. And you may be thinking, gee, with college and pro football to choose from, normally you would expect with the greater number of games, the leader would be having a much better point spread record. And I guess it's just the fact that it's only 65%, and I put only in quotes because that's still a very good handicapping percentage regardless of the contest. Usually it's higher, but it's been sort of a very unusual college football season as far as form goes and normal situations occurring. But kudos to the contestant who is leader at basically about the halfway point of the contest. In fact, of the 153 contestants, only 9 entries are hitting at 60% or more, and that works out to just about 5.9% of the field is hitting at 60% or more. So not as easy as a lot of people seem to believe that it is, or certainly not at least this year. Next, we turn to the 2 contests sponsored by the Westgate Race and Sportsbook. It originally was the Hilton contest, then LVH, and for the last decade since Westgate has taken over, it's become known as the Westgate. And in fact, over the past decade or so, they added a second contest, the Super Contest Gold, which carries a $5,000 entry fee, winner take all. A total of 92 entries this year in that contest. $460,000 in the prize pool for one lucky winner, because there will be tiebreakers at the end. Heading into this past week, the consensus was at 21-18-1, and in the Super Contest Gold of the 92 selections, the 5 most popular, which is what we report on as far as the consensus plays are concerned, a perfect 5-0, bringing the record up to 26-18-1. That's 26.5 out of a possible 45 points, 58.9% for the contestants as a whole, those 92 entries. The 5 selections, again, all winners this week. The most popular selection, the Cleveland Browns with their win over the Arizona Cardinals, an easy point spread cover, followed by the Cincinnati Bengals over the Buffalo Bills, the Washington Commanders upsetting the New England Patriots. And there was actually a tie for the 4th most popular selection. Again, remember, only 92 contestants, so a selection being tied is not that unusual considering the limited number of entries. The 4th most popular selection was a tie between the Minnesota Vikings over the Atlanta Falcons. That was a winner, as was the Monday night game, the Los Angeles Chargers over the New York Jets as 3.5-point favorites. So 5-0, very good week for the contestants. We report on the leader each week. There is a single leader through the first 45 selections or 9 weeks of the contest. That leader has a point spread record of 32-12-1 for 32.5 out of a possible 45 points, translating to a winning percentage of 72.2%. Once again, we take a look at the percentage of the field that is hitting at 60% or better. Only 11 of the 92 contestants, or the 92 entries, have a record that is 60% or better, and that works out to 12.0% of the entire field of 92. Now we turn to the other contest sponsored by the Westgate Race and Sportsbook. This is now known as the Super Contest Classic to differentiate it from the Super Contest Gold. This carries a $1,000 entry fee. 1,301 entries this year. The consensus heading into this past week for the 5 most popular selections, 22, 17, and 1. This past week saw those 5 most popular selections. The consensus go 4-1, bringing that record, ironically, to the same record as the consensus in the Super Contest Gold, 26, 18, and 1. That's 58.9%. And unlike the 92 entries in the Super Contest Gold, there are 1,301 entries here. So that's a very impressive record considering that large of a contest field. The leader in the Super Contest Classic has a point spread record of 35, 9, and 1 for 35.5 of a possible 45 points, and that translates to an incredibly impressive 78.9% success rate. Of the 1,301 entries, 167 of them are hitting at 60% or better, and that's 12.8, slightly better than the gold, but a more meaningful number considering the larger size of the field. 12.8% of the entire field in the Super Contest Classic hitting right now at 60%. And as I note each week, we can expect these percentages to drop off a bit as the season progresses, as it's hard to maintain that record of success over a full 18 weeks of a contest that will ultimately have 90 selections submitted, and we're halfway there after the first 9 weeks. Now we turn to the 2 new kids on the block. The contest sponsored by the Circa Race and Sportsbook. One is the Circa Sports Million. This is in the 5th year of its livelihood, having started in 2019. And the second contest, which will follow up on this, is the Circa Survivor in its 4th year. This contest had a guaranteed prize pool of a minimum of $6 million, which required at least 6,000 entries at $1,000 each. There is an overlay in this contest of almost $750,000, as there were quote-unquote only 5,274 entries, leaving a shortfall that the Circa had to make up out of its own pockets of $726,000. Very structured, very much along the lines of the Westgate Super Contest. 5 selections a week against the static point spread. Here, where the Westgate releases their contest lines on Wednesday afternoon/evening, Pacific versus Eastern time, the contest selection point spreads for the Circa contest are released on Thursday mornings at roughly 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. Again, I report on the consensus each week, which was 19, 19, and 2, exactly 50% heading into week number 9. And this past week, this consensus was a nice 4-1, bringing the record to date for the 5,274 entry field to 23, 20, and 2. That's 24 of a possible 45 points, translating to a profitable, though not outstanding, 53.3% winning percentage for the most popular selections amongst the more than 5,200 contestants. This past week, the winners were the most popular selection, the Cincinnati Bengals. In fact, over 2,100 contestants, more than 40% of the field, used the Bengals as one of their 5 selections. Not far behind the Cleveland Browns. I will point out that part of the reason why the Browns were so popular is the contest line came out before the news of the Arizona quarterback change following their trade of Joshua Dobbs the end of early in the week at the end of the trading deadline. The contest line came out at -7.5. They made the change, and the betting line on the board went up to as high as 11, 11.5. So there was a tremendous quote-unquote value on playing the Browns, and of course they came through with a very impressive 27-0 victory, basically showing that the line move reacting to the Cardinal change in quarterback was very justified. So they had just under 1,950 contestants, all again, close to 40% of the field. That was another winner. The third most popular selection was the lone loser amongst the consensus picks last week, Monday night on the Jets. The 4th and 5th selections, the Kansas City Chiefs, and they covered in their game in Germany against the Dolphins. The Eagles covered in their game Sunday afternoon at home against the Cowboys. So a nice 23, 20, and 2 following that 4-1 week. There are 2 co-leaders after the first 9 weeks at the halfway point. They have a record of 33, 11, and 1 for 33.5 of 45 possible points, translating to a 74.4% winning percentage. But again, how tough is it to hit at 60%? Well, through halfway point of the 5,274 entries, 693, large number, of the 5274 at 60% or better, but that 693 translates to 13.1% of the field, which is a little bit more than 1 out of every 8 entries is managing to hit 60%. Finally, we get to what's become the most popular, the most talked about contest probably throughout the world as far as legalized sponsored handicapping contests, and that's the Circa Survivor. This had a guaranteed prize pool of $8 million, so they needed 8,000 entries to fully fund the contest. They actually exceeded that by more than 1,200, 9,267 entries, making it a winner-take-all prize pool of $9,267,000. Of the 9,267 entries through the first 8 weeks of the contest, 8,066 had already been eliminated. That's 87% of the original field gone just prior to the halfway point of the season. It was a pretty much formful week in the week 9 of the contest for a couple of reasons in a moment. Only 48 of the remaining 1,201 selections that were alive into week 9 were eliminated, which was 4% of the remaining field. 1,153 entries advanced to week number 10. That represents 12.4% of the original field. So a lot of carnage a few weeks ago eliminated over 1,000 contestants. Right now, of the 1,153 entries, the imputed value of each of those 1,153 entries is $8,037 for those of you who may be watching or listening and have an entry in the contest and want to know what the value is. If you wanted to go ahead and sell that entry, especially if you have multiple entries, that's the current mathematical value. Of course, determining the quote-unquote actual value would depend upon the entry that you're looking to sell or looking to buy, based upon the fact that you can only use, remember, this is a contest where you pick the straight-up winner, no points involved. You can only use a team once, so the combination of the teams that an entry has already used and the teams that are remaining, of the 32 teams with the 2 extra double contest weeks on Christmas and Thanksgiving, that means you're going to make a total of 20 selections. So you still have 23 teams available, and that may very well factor into the actual, or at least your considered value on the remaining entries based upon the teams used and the teams remaining and the way the schedule folds out. I will mention, I did mention that form held up because there were two huge choices last week. The Browns in the aforementioned game against the Cardinals, and the Saints, the largest favorite on the board last week, laying literally 9 points at home against the Bears. Those two teams, the Browns had 647 of the 1,201 contestants on them, and the Saints had 458 of the 1,201 on them. That represented about 92% of the remaining entries spread out amongst those two teams. So you had a lot of people rooting for either the Saints and or the Browns to go down. Neither did, although the Saints were in more of a test than they expected. Nonetheless, the highest chosen team last week that was eliminated were the Atlanta Falcons, whose game came down to a game-ending touchdown by the Minnesota Vikings. Only 39 contestants were on the Falcons last week, but they are gone. In fact, of the teams that were picked, it was only about a dozen or so. I think it was 13 teams were picked. Most of them won. Patriots were eliminated on 4 entries. Buffalo eliminated on 1. And once again, we had some contestants who didn't submit an entry. That was a total of 4 this week. So we have 1,153 remaining, competing for all or part of a $9,267,000 prize pool. And we'll be back next week with more on the contest as we approach the all-important Thanksgiving week coming up in a couple of weeks. We've talked about it before, but contestants will have to make one selection on Thanksgiving Day and Black Friday. If they survive, they'll then have to make selections for the games on Sunday and Monday that week. And that's the story this week. After 9 weeks of the contest review, we'll be back next week with a review of where things stand after week number 10.